under the weather and still here. You're listening to Brothers of the Serpent Podcast.
Snake Bros! And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, angels and demons and monsters, and skirtards and grandmas, to Brothers of the Serpent Podcast, coming to you not live here in the 10x10x10 tangent cube of science, nestled amongst the dusty bones of an ancient seabed high atop the Edwards Plateau. So, we're taking a brief pause from the gods of Eden. Russ has the Rona, so he doesn't want to do any talking today.
Only on one side of his throat.
But we're all here crammed in the cube, in our hazmat suits.
Yeah.
And we've got a great interview with Chris Cottrel from Dabbler's Den coming up in the second segment, talking about splash chevrons.
Yeah.
Which
Very cool.
Russ came to work raving about today, very quietly since he can't talk. And so we got him on. We're also going to have another guest to just talk about nothing, which is our good friend and not quite so long-head Brendan, but he may be of the long-head order.
It could be.
So he will be coming on later as well. And we got some good stuff for you guys today. But yeah, we are taking a break from the book. We'll get back into that next week. And I also wanted to let you guys know that I will be making a compilation of the Gods of Eden series, just all the book content.
Yeah.
You know, I'll put it all together in one giant, however long it's going to be, file.
Yeah.
At some point in the future.
And then we'll throw it up in the feed.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's going to be great.
We have the lovely Laura in the studio with us.
Hey.
Hey, babe. How's it
Hi.
going?
It's going great.
Yeah. What about the Watcher?
Oh, yes. And our good friend and longhead, the Watcher, from deep beneath his space station in secret outer space. How's it going, buddy?
Goes well, man. That interview was awesome.
The one the one that we
It will be awesome. I can foresee this using my Watcher scope. It'll, damn it. I don't time travel too well.
But you can see everything from where you are.
Right, he gets confused, folks.
Yeah.
Because everything is clear to the Watcher, including the future.
Well, it's also, there's some time dilation there because he's going really fast compared to the rest of us.
That's right. You're totally right about that.
It's okay.
Yeah. It's good that you can see the future sometimes, Watcher. So
Yeah, all of those excuses are the ones that I'm going to use in retrospect.
All right, so we're gonna do some space weather news and some emails, and I have 0 articles of interest today.
okay, that's fine. We have a great space weather setup here, and a lot of emails. And I just want to say quick, I don't have the Rona. I think
It was a joke.
I mean, I probably don't have it, but just the back of my throat is incredibly swollen, just one side. I just woke up with it like this, and it's probably allergies. But yeah, talking is kind of an issue. So anyway, I will be able to do this first segment, and after that, it's going to be all Kyle and Laura. I'm just going to STFU. So let's do space weather news from spaceweather.com. Dang, my phone turned off. Comet Swan heads north. Comet Swan has crossed the celestial equator, and it is now visible from the northern hemisphere. The comet has faded a little since its naked eye outburst last week, but it is still an easy binocular object at magnitude +6. To see it, wake up early and look east just before sunrise. Also, the Great Geomagnetic Storm of May 1921. 99 years ago this week, people around the world woke up to some unusual headlines. Quote, "Telegraph service prostrated. Comet not to blame," declared the Los Angeles Times on May 15th, 1921. "Electrical disturbance is worst ever known," reported the Chicago Daily Tribune. "Sunspot credited with rail tie-up," deadpanned the New York Times. They didn't know it at the time, but the newspapers were covering the biggest solar storm of the 20th century. Nothing quite like it has happened since. It began on May 12, 1921, when giant sunspot AR 1842, crossing the sun during the declining phase of solar cycle 15, began to flare. One explosion after another hurled coronal mass ejections directly towards Earth. For the next 3 days, CMEs rocked Earth's magnetic field. Scientists around the world were surprised when their magnetometers suddenly went off scale. Pins and stripped chart recorders pegged uselessly to the top of the paper. And then the fires began. Around 2 o'clock GMT on May 15th, telegraph exchange in Sweden burst into flames. An hour later, the same thing happened across the Atlantic in the village of Brewster in New York. Flames engulfed the switchboard at Brewster Station of the Central New England Railroad and quickly spread to destroy the entire building. That fire, along with another one about the same time in a railroad control tower near New York City's Grand Central Station, is why the event is sometimes referred to as the New York Railroad Superstorm. What caused the fires? Electrical currents induced by geomagnetic activity surged through telephone and telegraph lines, heating them to the point of combustion. Strong currents disrupted telegraph systems in Australia and Brazil, Denmark, France, Japan, New Zealand, Norway, Sweden, the UK, and the US. The Ottawa Journal reported that many long-distance telephone lines in New Brunswick were burned out by the storm. On some telegraph lines in the USA, voltages spiked as high as 1,000 volts. During the storm's peak on May 15th, southern cities like Los Angeles and Atlanta felt like Fairbanks with northern lights dancing overhead while telegraph lines crackled with geomagnetic current. Auroras were seen in the U.S. as far south as Texas, while in the Pacific, red auroras were sighted from Samoa and Tonga and ships at sea crossing the equator. What would happen if such a storm occurred today? Researchers have long grappled with that question, most recently in a pair of in-depth papers published in the journal Space Weather. Hey, sounds like a good journal. The Great Storm of May 1921, an exemplar of a dangerous space weather event by Mike Hapgood. Wonder if he's any relation to old Hapgood there.
Yeah.
And intensity and impact of the New York Railroad Superstorm of May 1921. Those are both links, so if you guys want to check these out, you can go to spaceweather.com. By Jeffrey Love from the U.S. Geological Survey. The summary above is largely a result of Hapgood's work. He painstakingly searched historical records, including scientific journals, newspaper clippings, and other reports, to create a moment-by-moment timeline of the storm. Such timelines are invaluable to emergency planners who can use them to prepare for future storms. Jeffrey Love and colleagues also looked into the past, and jackpot, they found some old magnetic chart recordings that did not go off scale when the May 1921 CMEs hit. Using this data, they calculated DST, which is Disturbance Storm Time Index, a measure of geomagnetic activity favored by many space weather researchers. The storm attained an estimated maximum DST on 15th of May of 907 plus or minus 132, an intensity comparable to that of the Carrington event of 1859, they wrote in their paper. This dry-sounding result upends conventional wisdom. Students of space weather have long been taught that the Carrington event, which was DST 900, was the strongest solar storm in recorded history. Now we know that the May 1921 storm was about equally intense. If this storm hit today, I'd expect it to lead to most, if not all, of the impacts outlined in the 2013 Royal Academy of Engineering report led by Paul Cannon, says Hapgood. This could include regional power outages, profound changes to satellite orbits, and loss of radio-based technologies such as GPS. The disruption of GPS could significantly impact logistics and emergency services. It's something to think about on the 99th anniversary of this 100-year storm.
Why? I don't understand why, like, telegraph wire stations and stuff like that caught on fire. Like, now they're everywhere, right?
Yeah. And they're like, well, it would disrupt GPS. No, like, everything would catch on fire.
Yeah. I'm wondering. or have they, because now there's codes with you've got your all of your wires are encased, and of course they probably have better insulation. The insulation back then was cloth.
Yeah,
in a lot of cases.
That's true.
So the insulation has a lot higher of a temperature rating.
Yeah.
And then the connections are protected in boxes, whereas they used to be soldered together in the walls.
Okay.
So maybe that's why they don't think they're sort of engineered to withstand much higher heats, temperatures, I mean.
Yeah, good question.
But still, It makes me think if it was powerful enough that every structure would catch on fire.
Right. It was inducing the current in the wire.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I'm saying. Like, it doesn't matter what protections you've got anywhere. It's going to induce it into every wire inside the walls of your house. So even so,
they may not catch on fire if it's not hot enough.
But the stuff around them will. I guess if the insulator can keep the heat in.
Yeah. If the insulator doesn't catch on fire.
Yeah.
That doesn't matter. Watcher's saying our electricity and all wiring involves resistors. These storms induce high amperage currents, which means the resistors heat, then melt and burst into flame. But the wires between the resistors would still get hot.
Yeah.
Because they would be having currents induced.
Current conditions, by the way.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, Benny.
Sorry. Wind speed or solar wind speed is 301.8 kilometers per second. And the density is a relatively high, 12.4 protons per cubic centimeter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what's wrong with you.
That's it. Too many protons. And we're at 102 spotless days for 2020.
Wow.
So, yeah, still in the depths of solar minimum. 100 days at this early in the year. That's pretty serious, I think. It's pretty serious.
Well, we're almost halfway through the year.
Yeah.
But
That's
still.
true. That's true. But I was trying to think of, like, last year that it was much more spaced out, I think. You know, like they would have 76 spotless days, and then there would be a sunspot for a little while, and then there would be another 80. So a stretch of 100 is pretty cool. Or not cool. Don't know. Or it could be that we're going to get cool. Yeah. Yeah.
It's cool.
Yeah, it's cool.
It might not be cool.
It might not be cool to get that cold. All right, so we have so I got some emails here. Better read them before my voice totally gives out. This is from Kevin, called Ancient Tools. He says, "Morning, boys and girl. Was waking and snaking, as I do, and had a bit of an epiphany about ancient tools. We see the evidence of power tools all over the ancient world, of all sorts and varieties. What if the Shamir was a top-of-the-line brand of construction tools like DeWalt, or similar today, or perhaps a family of tools that mate to one singular badass powerhead? It could have a circular saw attachment, a core driller, a polisher, or maybe even a tone generator for lifting the stones. Mystery solved. Next!"
That's great.
Keep on slithering, Kevin. Oh, and P.S. Still waiting for Laura to match me with my snake mate.
Kevin, I've been thinking about you. I told you I was going to think about it. I've been thinking about it. I'm going to need you to send over a picture, a profile. You're going to need to attend the next Snake Bros event so that I can meet you in person.
She'll hook you up, bro.
That's great.
This one's from...
So basically what he's saying is that future armchair archaeologists or whatever will be sitting around being like, what was the DeWalt?
Yeah, what was the DeWalt?
Dude, what was the DeWalt?
Yeah, it's a legendary tool.
I love to think about that. Whenever you guys say things just like that, I love just really pondering on those future people trying to figure that out.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right.
I heard they were in the Amazon, quote unquote.
Oh man, it's gonna be so confusing.
That's
gonna be
good.
confusing.
That's good.
Yeah. It was on the net. That's gonna make it even more confusing.
Yeah.
They're gonna start looking. They're gonna be like, the tool was kept in the net,
In the web.
Right,
Yeah.
Yeah.
in the net on the web. What?
Who is always ordering this web around? I ordered it on the web.
Yeah. All right, this one's from Russell. He says, it's part 5, exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. Hey, Snake Bros and girls, just writing to say, I didn't want part 5 of Gods of Eden to end. This book is so good. I found the Mayan creation story in the Popol Vuh very interesting, and it makes me wonder if there are any descendants of their first versions still around. Or was this trial batch the same group of people in the biblical the biblical God drowned like a... Let's see. Let me make sure I know what he's trying to say here. The same group of people, the biblical God drowned like a sack full of unwanted people in the Great Flood story. That's what it is. It looked like sake or sake. I'm like, it can't be a sake.
So wait, what is he saying again?
Was this trial batch that the people of wood that were in the
Oh,
Purple Blue?
yeah, okay.
Was this trial batch the same group of people the biblical God drowned like a sack full of unwanted people in the puppies in the Great Flood story? It's so fun to ponder this stuff. Once again, your podcast saves the day by making my day at work a lot more bearable. So for that, I thank you. P.S. I picked up a Brothers of the Serpent t-shirt from TeePublic. Can't wait to get it. Snake Searly, Jedi Rusty. That's what he calls himself.
Awesome.
Huh.
Yeah, it is interesting. Were the first people that were made the people of wood? Were those the ones drowned? Are you saying those are the antediluvian people? That's an interesting concept. But it says in the Purple Blue that they wandered around on all fours aimlessly, so I don't think so, because the pre-flood people were supposedly very advanced, right?
Yeah.
Okay, this is from, many names, from many different names.
Okay, so I had the watcher check on this, but so the first electric lighting systems were Edison, late 1880s, early 1890s, and Westinghouse in the modern electric era started in 1892 when Edison Electric with Thomas Houston Electric, which formed General Electric. Okay. So I was asking that because this 99-year-old solar storm,
Yeah,
was a long time after that. Really, it was in the 1920s, right?
right.
So there was a lot of
There were electric systems.
wiring systems going, and they didn't all catch on fire.
Right.
But it, I don't know.
That is interesting. Yeah, you're right.
I'm wondering too if
But how many really were there? I mean, I guess they would have just been in the cities.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, you're right. That's a good point, because the Carrington event happened before that, but this one is afterwards. So, and if it was the same strength roughly as the Carrington event, then maybe we wouldn't be in serious trouble if we had another
Right.
one now. But if it was stronger, maybe we would.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to call this person Potman, because that's his Discord username.
All right.
And that's what he titled the email as, even though his email address is giving me his name. I think he just wants to be called Potman. He says,
Duh.
hey, what?
What's up, Potman?
Yeah. He's in the Discord. He says, hi, Snake Bros and Snake Wife.
Hi.
I am still listening to the previous podcast and keeping up to date with the latest one. A few observations from a few. Please do not take anything I put in either notes on YouTube or emails that I send as a criticism of your work, but more of the ramblings of a curious mind.
All right.
Episode 146. This is an observation. Don't change what you were doing. I know that you get some suggestions and feedback. I always said take no notice of advice from someone that was not asked to provide said advice or is also given freely.
I like that.
Therefore, don't take any notice of this. I would say that the response to the suggestion to look at the electric universe is one that you probably get, along with lots of others that no doubt have already been covered if said individual had listened to all the previous casts. However, if it is given in innocence, then it would be helpful to thank the individual and provide suggested casts that cover these areas. As your congregation grows, you will get many of the same suggestions if individuals start to feel that their suggestion may gain them ridicule or a put down. Okay, so I think he's saying that we're going to get a lot of them, but they may stop. I think that's what he meant to say. Right?
Like people won't want to send emails because we're like, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Thanks, buddy. Right. Yeah. So I think that's what he's saying.
That's a good point.
Yeah, and he says people will either stop providing you with suggestions, and therefore you may miss out on a connection to a piece of work, or that may lead you to an answer you seek. Yeah, I mean, I understand what you're saying. I guess in my own personal, like Kyle and I are both podcast listeners, and before we ever started the podcast, we listened to a lot of podcasts, and we still do. And I don't know. I'm kind of the way I think of it is like I become very, very familiar with a podcast's work before I ever think of sending them an email. But that's just me. Maybe I'm just, maybe that's just how I am. Like I've listened to many podcasts, and I listened to like just about everything I could find of theirs before I started talking to them.
But I mean, you don't have. I mean, if you listen to one episode and they're discussing something on there, you could comment on it.
Yeah, that's right.
You don't have to listen to the whole catalog.
Right. But I don't listen to one of their podcasts about some subject and then send them an email about some totally different subject and ask them if they ever talked about it.
Oh, okay.
Which is what happens with the Electric Universe all the time. All the time.
I'm with Russ on this one. Sorry.
The person listens to one episode that's not about the Electric Universe or anything related to it, and then emails us to ask if we'll talk about it. Or actually is that like, usually like, you should go do all this research on this topic.
Yeah.
And they'll give an indication of which episode they listen to, and I'll go look at it and I'm like, okay, that has nothing in there about the Electric Universe at all. So they didn't hear us talk about it, but we weren't even talking about anything tangential to the Electric Universe, except that Electric Universe people think that everything is about the Electric Universe. But I understand what you're saying. We shouldn't give them crap. But they're just really annoying.
But can I say something really quick? In our family, we give each other crap.
That's right.
Yeah.
You have to be ready to take your shit. And I actually think that I coined that phrase in the group.
Yep.
You'll learn how to take your shit better.
learn how to take your shit.
I mean, you guys hear how much crap we give each other.
And wait,
Right.
you don't even hear all of it.
Right.
Holy smokes.
You hear how much crap we give each other on the show, how much crap we give the watcher.
Blazed today at the sifting table.
Totally deserved it.
Yeah. Did you know what, though? I stood up and I took my shit.
That's right. Really? Okay, so the email from the guy about the John Doe.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things about that, like John Doe.
Really? Yeah.
Anyway, but it was all in good fun, and we even talked about it afterwards. Like, was that too hardcore?
Yeah.
And then we listened to it and we were like, it's funny.
Yeah.
So it's we love you.
Yeah, we do.
Send us emails.
Yeah, send us emails.
Send me
Sometimes we'll get
Just take it a little easy on the Electric Universe.
I mean, no, send me all the Electric Universe
All
emails
right.
you want. Just
Send them
don't
on.
expect them to ever get read.
The other thing I wanted to say too is that I don't know if we mentioned this last time, but like in two episodes ago, you were like, I read the best emails.
Yeah.
And then the one after that, you were like, wait a minute, no, there's so many great emails, I can't possibly read them all.
Right.
And that's the
So-
thing. It's an ongoing conversation. And if everybody will just keep tuning in, they'll get
Well,
the
that's what I was
whole
going to
deal.
say. If your email doesn't get read, doesn't mean it was bad. Send another one. Like, just keep listening. Send another one.
Yeah,
because
keep sending them.
Eventually, it'll happen. That's all I wanted to say. Like,
Yeah, that's right.
There's a lot of emails coming in, and the same person might send multiple emails, and one of them will get read. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was all the point I wanted.
That's a good point. Yeah. And we talked about that. Yeah. So, like, if you send us an email,
Did we?
Okay. Yeah, you and I talked about it.
Oh, yeah. Not on the show.
Right. Not on the show. Yeah. If you send us an email and it doesn't get read, it doesn't, you should definitely keep sending emails because eventually I'll be able to read one. There's just so many and I have to pick and choose. And just because I don't pick yours doesn't mean it was a bad email. Definitely not.
And
But if it has anything about Electric Universe in it, it's definitely not going to get read.
But if you do get given crap, keep coming back because we probably
Yeah,
love you.
yeah.
If
We
you can
all-
take your crap, then we love you.
We all do. Yeah, we do.
Also,
shit
if you're a
hard.
Cosmographia listener and you email me on the Brothers of the Serpent podcast email about Cosmographia stuff, it definitely won't get read. Because it's the wrong podcast. Email Cosmographia about that stuff. Am I being too harsh here, guys?
No. You're not. But I'm
Hey,
a
man.
tough love supporter. My whole life I've been a tough love supporter. So you're not going to hear me.
What was his name?
Oh, Potman. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good point though. We're not trying to like nail people hard because they email us something. You know what I mean?
I mean, I totally am.
Well, that's what I'm trying to point out is
Shush.
it's the way we are. Whether this podcast was going on or not, we give people crap. I mean, we
Yeah.
do it every day in the family. You have to be tough.
Yeah.
So toughen up and keep sending emails.
We
and then
love you
toughen
guys.
up.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
love you.
Yeah.
I love you the most.
And you know what? Well, the Watcher's right. We get a lot of shit in the emails. So
Exactly.
It goes both ways.
Exactly. Like grandma. Grandma dished it
Grandma.
out.
That was
blazed us.
Yeah, but she
That
gave
was
us
a
5
review.
stars.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Blazed us in the review.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah. All right. So he says, continue on with this email. Episode 91, which is, I looked it up. It's the one we did with Dr. Brian, the physicist.
Yeah.
I went down to. He says, although I loved your conversation, I did find him very condescending on the sly, much like Brian Cox. So was his name Brian?
I'm trying to remember. Brian
Keating. Yeah, Keating. Says, full of shit as they just make shit up and then make it sound like they have solved a riddle that everyone wanted the answers to. What put my back up is their use of the words such as, we know that the universe is X years old, and other statements like this, because we don't know that at all. Hey, totally right.
Totally agree with that.
Great point.
So, he says, if you want to prove that the paranormal exists, you need to start telling everyone that the paranormal is, as we all know, real. Eventually, enough people start to say the same thing. Then you do the same thing as the team that did not take a picture of a black hole. You say that we are unable to actually see or measure anything directly. What we are going to do is decide that we can measure, say, heat. If we then say, okay, I think what he's trying to give an example here of how you could
do this with the
same thing with the paranormal.
Yeah.
That way you can get your proof of the existence of the paranormal, and it can then be peer reviewed by providing the sensors and program to anyone that wants to check your evidence. Anyway, he says, keep on growing and passing on your great knowledge. All the best, Potman.
Yeah, good point.
Yep.
Yeah, man. It's like that physics article the other day about like warm dark matter.
Right.
It's just more, okay, it annoys me, but I also like to follow it, you know?
Yeah.
I like to follow it.
Watch your sit.
Oh, man.
Yeah. All right. So this is from Tom. He says, greetings, dear shiny snake people. See, we know where you're coming from. You're already on thin ice. Greetings and felicitations from Ireland, a country that has no snakes due to the intervention of the Holy Roman Church and her Irish ambassador, Patrick. St. Patrick, St. Patty, depending on your place in the world you choose. In the last few months, I found your podcast by following a very well laid out trail of crumbs from Hancock to Carlson into your good selves. I am a serious believer in our ancient history and all that goes with it, whether commonly acceptable or not. I don't have any need for aliens in our history, although for a bald guy, Giorgio's hair is something to be jealous of. So I guess he's saying he's bald and he's like totally jealous there. I've never come across a situation where they were required to explain a situation. As a species, I believe we are more than capable of having achieved everything we have by taking a different view of history and the circular habit I believe it has. Guys, you're doing a great job, and your approach and love of what you're doing is so obvious. Keep digging, but more importantly, keep poking. I hope you make it to Egypt someday. Failing that, isn't there a pyramid in Vegas?
We've seen that one.
Yep, and we've been in that one. There is an Irish blessing that hopes, quote, you make it to heaven half an hour before the devil knows you're dead. Be well, Tom. Snakes!
That's great.
I've never, that's interesting.
That's a great one. Hope you make it to heaven
Well,
half an hour.
there's one snake there now. Welcome home, buddy. Yeah, thanks a lot.
Yeah. Okay.
And I agree on the aliens thing. Like I was a big, Anunnaki guy. You know,
Yeah.
have you heard of the Anunnaki? They came from Nibiru. You can see it if you block out the sun. But yeah, I agree with Hancock's
Yeah. We don't need
way
aliens.
of looking at it. Yeah.
Not that they aren't there. We just don't need them to explain this stuff.
Right.
Yeah. All right. This one's from Andrew. The title is A Little Late, I Know, but ... Dear Snakes, just a quick note to say how much I enjoy your podcast. Cannot say I agree 100% with all that you present, but I dare say neither do you. But it is really important that we hear voices that contradict the standard model and accepted science.
Yes.
I have just finished off listening to your interview with Dr. Chandra Wickramasinghe. Yes, I know I'm a little behind. However, between you guys, Where Did the Road Go, Aeon Bite, Rune Soup, and Cosmographia, I have some wonderful material to listen to and not enough time. Anyway, I digress. I was especially interested with the comment in the Dr. Wickramasinghe interview to the effect that the COVID-19 virus may have been circulating before the outbreak in Wuhan. So I thought you might be interested in an anecdote. I currently live in Hong Kong and have done so for 20 years. It may not be covered in the U.S., press. However, Hong Kong has only had about 1,000 recorded cases of the coronavirus in total and only 4 deaths. As of 10th of May, we have had 20 straight days of no community transmission of the virus. And all of this in one of the most densely populated places in the world. How is this possible, especially as the Hong Kong government, for reasons I won't bore you with, was slow in shutting the border with China? So plenty of people crossed over to escape the virus. The fact that everyone here has been wearing masks since January has undoubtedly helped. And we have great contact tracing and well-equipped hospitals. But even so, this brings me to my point. My wife came down with a really bad cough in mid-December. So bad that she thought she broke a rib from coughing so badly. She took a couple of weeks to shake it off and had to have a couple of bouts of therapeutic massage for what turned out to be sprained chest muscles. A few other people we know of had the mysterious cough at the same time. Me, I felt a little lethargic for one day, and that was it. But I wonder whether this was an earlier strain of the coronavirus circulating in Hong Kong and perhaps other parts of China ahead of the outbreak of a far more dangerous strain in Wuhan. And if so, could one of the reasons that the numbers are so low in Hong Kong be that
antibodies?
A lot of people have antibodies acquired from the earlier strain?
Yeah.
I don't think anyone has thought of testing the larger population for antibodies. And even if they did, they may attribute any antibodies to asymptomatic exposure since February rather than anything acquired before then. Anyway, thought you may be interested. I will now remove my tinfoil hat. Keep up the great work. Remember, for slowpokes like me, space weather news is space weather recent history. Snakes. Andrew from Hong Kong.
Andrew from Hong Kong. Great.
Yep.
Are you in the Discord? Is he in the Discord?
I don't think so, but I don't know.
Andrew?
Yep, I think that's
Get in that Discord. I liked that email.
I think it's a good point. Yeah, we've been kicking that idea around too.
Yeah, we have.
Well, obviously, since all the the Wickramasinghe thing is like, wow.
Yeah. Yeah. But I do think it's a really interesting idea. Like Hong Kong's right there.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
How did they not get slammed with it?
Right.
So
happened before they started recording it.
yeah.
And
All
yep,
right.
I think the antibody test is the key. You know, that's going to be the key to
And I'm
figuring out what really happened.
And I'm happy to hear real numbers from somebody who's over there with the real
Yeah.
press. You know?
That's right. Okay, this next one's from Anne. This is about the YouTube. When I was asking about YouTube, just I was wondering people who listen on YouTube versus.
Yeah.
She says, "Hi Russ, you were wondering on the show why people would listen to YouTube rather than the RSS feed. For me, it's that I watch a lot of things that aren't podcasts: Time Team, Megalithomania, History Channel, etc. So it is simpler just to stay on YouTube. Just a different situation than listening while working or driving. Hope you all are doing well. I am resisting the urge to go to the post office. Best wishes, Anne."
Does that mean she's like really wanting to
She's
send
gonna
us
mail us
something?
something.
Or she's going postal. I'm trying to figure out which one she means. You're going to the post office means you're about to flip out and kill everybody, or you just want to send us a one-up box. Could be one or the other.
I loved the one-up box with that book for me and the stickers for the baby snake.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Maybe that is what she meant. She didn't mean that she wanted to flip out and kill everybody.
She's wanting to send us something because she
going
loves
postal.
us. We love you, Anne.
I thought she was saying, she's stuck in quarantine and she's getting ready to go postal.
Okay.
That's just me.
You're a conspiratard.
Yeah. It's my conspiratard brain coming out. Okay, this one's from Chris, who is from Let's Go Banners.
What's up, buddy?
So it's titled Snakes, and he says, "Hi, Russ and Kyle. Glad you like the banners, and thank you for the shout out. I enjoyed designing the pyramid banner and didn't realize it was close to the golden ratio. I guess I missed a golden ratio opportunity." It's golden opportunity with ratio in parentheses in there. Keep up the good work, Chris.
Well, I'm going to have to go get actual measurements and we'll see. Like, you may have just inadvertently been like, that looks
Great.
like the right proportions,
Yeah,
which
it
would make
looks
sense.
Good. Yeah. All right, I know we're going over time here, but we still got more. Should I just save these for
It's all
next?
good. Go. It's
okay.
my show.
Yeah,
Just
that's totally
go,
your
man.
show. All right, this is a comment on episode 118, which was the lost technologies of ancient Egypt. Says, hi there, Brothers of the Serpent. I bought myself a Brothers of the Serpent t-shirt. Oh, yeah. Love your podcast. Love the topics. So thank you a lot. By the way, Dutch comedian Herman Finkers said, quote, the earth is not flat. It is round. Like a pancake, unquote. Right. So keep it up. Really enjoy your podcast, Snakes. I think it's from Hob. I think he might be Dutch. I'm not sure. But yeah, thanks, buddy. I appreciate it. Thanks for buying the t-shirt.
Yeah, buddy.
Yeah. And you're right. It's flat like a disc, a pancake. It's round. I think we talked about this in the last show. Which is why it's weird that he's posting this on 118. I'm like, did we talk about that in that one too?
Yeah, maybe. Who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah, the flat Earth comes up often.
Yeah, it does.
Since episode 2.
Oh, and Nick, I just want to say thanks for sending us the art, dude. Looks awesome. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. He's got some good sketches of cool stuff that he sent us. Okay, this one's from Steve, called Mars Atmosphere. He says, hey, Snakes. Thank you for bringing Randall to the masses. Since that podcast has started and I discovered the Snakes content, I've really enjoyed your work. Now to the meat of this email, I have some thoughts on Mars. Looking at images of Mars, it seems pretty apparent that at some point fluvial activity was occurring on the planet's surface on a pretty significant scale. Making the assumption that any liquid would be made up of H2O as opposed to liquid iron or anything like that, the planet would have to have had substantial amounts of hydrogen and oxygen. The established model says that the Martian atmosphere has been blown away or eroded by solar winds, but this is what trips me up. All of this hydrogen and oxygen is held to the planet by gravitational forces, so do solar winds blow, or whatever solar winds do, with enough force to push all this hydrogen and oxygen beyond the planet's gravitational pull? I'm going to qualify this all by saying that I'm just a dummy in Ohio trying to grasp the universe one particle of knowledge at a time. But the solar wind concept just doesn't seem to make sense to me.
Protons moving at 300 kilometers per second.
Yeah. I think the key here that you might be missing, Steve, is the idea of the magnetosphere. The idea is that Mars once had one,
right,
and that would have protected its atmosphere from the solar wind like it does with us. But if you lose it somehow, either the core stops spinning or the planet doesn't have enough tidal forces on it, like our planet has this giant moon, which is constantly pulling the planet around,
keeping it hot
in the interior. So if Mars doesn't have that, and eventually all of its interior radioactive materials sort of run low, because that's another thing that keeps the interior of a planet hot, then everything starts to cool down and harden and solidify, and then you lose the magnetic field, and then you start losing the atmosphere to the solar wind. So I think that's
right. But that may have been a piece that he was missing, but I don't think so. He's just saying gravity holds that stuff down. So is the solar wind, why is it that if you take away,
gravity holds it down unless it's being blown away by the solar wind.
Yeah. So we should do an experiment, right?
Yeah.
We should blow a bunch of tobacco smoke into the cube until it's all cloudy, right? Sit in here really still, turn the AC off with a giant electromagnet in the middle, ready to power on. And then turn on a light so that we can see the turbulence in the smoke.
Yeah.
And then just crank up that electromagnet. Does the smoke move around? Is the air being shifted by the power of this electromagnet? Because it's all charged. All of the molecules of air have charge.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
And so this can create turbulence in and of itself, I would imagine.
Yeah.
So I think that's a great question. Yeah, gravity would hold it down, but would it be powerful enough if there was no magnetic field
to keep it from being blown away?
To keep it from being pushed away by this incredible charge that's coming from the sun.
Right.
Moving at incredible speeds.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's what they say in the standard model.
That is what they say. And there's an exoplanet that they found recently within the last couple of years. That's it's a gas giant. And it's incredibly close to its primary. So it's really close to its parent star.
Yes.
It's in like a Mercury orbit, but it's a Jupiter-sized planet or bigger. And it has this enormous stream coming off of it. because it's so close and it's a gas giant that even whether it has a magnetic field or not, all this gas is being blown off of it by the star.
So they know this happens.
Yeah. So I think that they know that happens. The question is why did Mars lose its magnetic field, or did it have one in the first place? I mean, like you would have to think that it would have had one if you go back far enough.
Because it would be hot.
Yeah. From formation.
The core would have been hot for a while.
Technically, yeah. But it doesn't have enough moons or enough mass in its moons to keep it hot. I don't know. But anyway, Venus is closer to the sun and has more of an atmosphere, and it's incredibly dense and thick. Does it have a magnetic field that protects that atmosphere from being blown away?
I don't know.
Yeah. But there's good questions.
And that's a cool experiment you came up with.
It is.
And if I was going to be in the cube, I would want goggles for that one.
Yeah. Starts to burn the eyes.
Oh, yeah, that's what burns the eyes.
Not mine.
You have super shields.
Yeah, you have shields on your eyes, bro. We don't.
Yeah. So anyway, Steve, thanks for the email. He has a bunch more in here about what he thinks maybe was happening, but I just wanted to answer the question that he was posing.
Okay. You got one more?
Yeah, one more. This is a comment, just a short comment from Joanne. It says, leafcutter ant problem. Get an armadillo. It's their favorite food. Problem solved. Next! Snakes!
Oh, good. I love that.
Yes. We should get a bunch of those. That's a great idea.
All right, I'm done.
All right. We're going to take a break.
Snakes!
Thanks, you guys. Oh, snakes.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is hopefully the second segment of the show. I'm not sure, because we are recording these out of order as usual when we're doing something strange with time. So we are joined by Chris Cottrel from the Dabbler's Den. I've been listening to some older episodes of other podcasts, namely the 7 Ages Audio Journal, which is a fantastic podcast. If any of you don't know about it, you should check it out. And, of course, you should check out the Dabbler's Den. But he was there with Micah Hanks and what are the other guys' names?
Jason Pentrell and James Waldo.
That's right. Those are the guys from the 7 Ages, and they were there at White Pond Lodge doing some archaeology, right? Tell us about that.
Yeah, it was awesome. We, I never really understood what archaeologists actually do. You know, everyone always thinks of Indiana Jones and how it's portrayed on TV.
Yeah.
But it's a super tedious. It's a skill. These guys get out there and they start shaving away layer upon layer upon layer of sand at a time. And I really, when I went up there that weekend, I had no idea what to expect. And afterwards, I mean, I just had a whole new, understanding of what goes on with the archaeological community. So, pretty amazing, really.
Yeah, it was a fantastic episode. So I'm gonna pull up the number of that so I can tell people which episode to go look at. But during that episode, I'm listening to you. You were talking to these guys, and you just kind of like on the fly sort of mentioned this thing you were looking at. You called splash chevrons. So that's what I was like, dude. You have to come on the show and talk about this because what a fantastic idea. And they didn't even let you dig into it on there. I was like, I want to hear more about splash chevrons. So let's hear what you got.
Right. Well, I had. Yeah, well, I didn't really have anything to talk about it at that point because I hadn't really started doing anything with it. It was all kind of a concept that Antonio Zamora, who we talked about last time, where we talked about these features that are all over the landscape that oftentimes are right along with the Carolina Bays, which are, pretty amazing and, mind-boggling to begin with. And once you actually start looking a little deeper, you start noticing these very strange ribbons of sand that run, through the landscape. Some of them have Carolina Bays in them, some of them don't, and it just really kind of piqued our interest. And so I was going up to White Pond anyways. I was going up to meet with these guys, And on my way up there, you know, if you're going to travel 5 or 6 hours away, you know, I want to have more than one thing to do at a time, you know, while I'm up there.
Yeah.
And so, you know, so I went ahead and I picked out 3 or 4 places where I wanted to stop and collect some sediments, and just to take them back and analyze them and see what we can figure out about these just neat features that are in the landscape.
Yeah. So you've made some videos about this
Mm-hmm.
that are on your channel.
Yeah.
What are there 3 of them?
There's 3 or 4 of them. I have a couple videos about the features themselves, where I go in and I actually. Well, let me go ahead and explain that these, first of all, they're right now the accepted scientific explanation for these are parabolic dunes. And a parabolic dune is something that you would normally see like at the beach, where you have a large amount of sand, and over time the wind kind of blows them into a certain parabolic shape. And you know, that's a shape that, you know, it would be very difficult to make in nature anyways, other than, you know, from wind blown features, or wind blown you know, causes or whatever. So these parabolic shapes are unique to beaches and things like that. But, you know, these are found, what we were finding are like in the middle of the states. They're in the middle of Georgia, they're in the middle of South Carolina, into North Carolina, and they're right along with these Carolina bays. And they're not really in that parabolic shape. So that kind of gave me, you know, well, there's something else going on here. Antonio Zamora was one who brought up that, you know, they look like tsunami chevrons that you find along the coast of like Madagascar, Africa, South America. You know, you go into Australia and you'll see these very unique tsunami chevrons where a tsunami will have happened and rush a ton of water and beach sand and all that up into the countryside and then back out, and then they form these chevrons. And you know, the problem is that where we're finding them in Georgia and South Carolina, North Carolina, they're not like on a coast. So, but they almost have that same exact chevron shape where, you know, there was a mass of water being rushed in and then rushed out, and then you're just left with this new landscape afterwards. And that's where I turned them. You know, it's almost like they're splash chevrons, like they were created at the same time that the Carolina bays would have been created if they had been created the way that we think that they've been created. You know, from chunks of laurentide ice, you know, that got thrown across the country. You know, and they're right alongside them, and some of them have Carolina bays within them. They're just really, really interesting features.
Yeah, so paint the picture, because we've got the idea of the Carolina bays, but and the idea that maybe like large chunks of ice flew. But what are we looking at here with these? Because you're not talking about a tsunami caused by an earthquake. You're talking about something else. Right.
Yeah. Let me show you a picture here.
Yeah. Let's take a look.
And I'm gonna show you another one. Hold on. All right. Let me screen share here. Okay, can you see that?
Yeah, it's coming up. Yeah, we see it.
Okay. All right. So, you know, obviously you see a bunch of Carolina bays here, and I'll put this into reference later on if you want to see where this is exactly. But you see a bunch of Carolina bays. And now keep in mind that, you know, the current scientific explanation for Carolina bays is that these were created by, you know, wind and water motion to form these very unique, you know,
right,
elliptical shapes in the landscape. But then if you'll notice right here, can you see my cursor?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay. If you notice, there's a ribbon of sand or difference in the landscape here that kind of runs, and this is a couple miles. This is about 3 miles that run from a central location here to the east. And, you know, this is what is being considered a parabolic dune. But if you compare this to some of the tsunami chevrons that we find along, you know, like we said just a second ago, like Africa and the Madagascar, you know, this is it definitely looks like one of these features, one of these tsunami features. So what I'm thinking happened is the same features that created these Carolina bays, where if we had an impact into the Laurentide ice sheet around Saginaw Bay or above the Great Lakes area, that the amount of ice that would have been ejected from that site would have came crashing back down, along the East Coast and also along, the Nebraska area in the West. And at the same time, if these chunks of ice were coming down, instead of landing on unconsolidated sediment, which is what would have created the Carolina bays, if they landed into pre-existing water, whether it be a river or a lake or something like that, that you would have had a splash of material that would have left from that location, and any sand or anything else that was in that location would have been ejected with it. So again, the Carolina bays we think are created from the same, falling of ice from the Laurentide ice sheet after an impact. And if the ice chunks landed into, water, then you would have had more of a splash that would have been directed, in that same direction, but it would have created a different landscape.
So is the idea here on this picture we're looking that it may have splashed into that river basin there? Is that what we're looking at?
Yeah, what I think here, actually, I don't think this river, and I explained this in like you mentioned a second ago, I have videos all on my YouTube channel about this, but I don't think that this was a pre-existing river.
Right.
I think that this river formed after the event that created the Carolina bays occurred.
Okay.
But I think that there was a body of water here, probably a pond or something like that would have been here. If a chunk of ice landed into that pond, the water got thrown in this direction, because you got to remember that all of these bays are kind of coming from the northwest anyways, and they would have hit that water, and all that, just everything would have been ejected out and moved into this easterly direction. And then, you find, like I said, Carolina bays on top of it as well, which is, kind of unique in its own right.
Right. Like those were coming later than this piece that splashed.
They had to. I mean, yeah, the law of superposition states, that, you have one thing forming before the next and the next. And so, if you have Carolina bays forming that have splash chevrons flowing into them, obviously the law of superposition states that Carolina bay had to have been there first. Then you have the splash chevron, and then now you have another Carolina bay forming on top of this large, because this is nothing but sand. I mean, all this stuff you see, you see these different colors and stuff in the image, but this ribbon is nothing but sand. It's just been pushed, in a certain direction. Now, like I said, the accepted scientific explanation is that wind would have blown all of this out from a location. Like there would have been a large area of sand here, and over time, wind would have continued to blow it out and blow it out and blow it out, and formed these, what they're calling parabolic dunes. But I don't see a parabolic dune in these pictures. I see more of a tsunami.
It does look like the features in Madagascar, I have to admit.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Look a lot like it.
Right.
Especially with the kind of strange changing directions of the ends of the chevron shapes. How one.
Mm-hmm. They're not all in the same direction.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
And like I said,
or expect with a windblown feature that they're all kind of more uniform than that.
Yeah, and you would be able to see them in different stages, but it's almost like they just happened and then they stopped happening, and then other stuff happened, and just using that law of superposition, you can kind of start putting things in an order, and it just doesn't line up with the current accepted explanation. If we use that current accepted explanation of Carolina bays, for instance. Supposedly over hundreds of thousands of years, the wind blowing in certain directions, basically from the northwest, from the west to the northwest of the west, they would have continued to create these oval or elliptical shapes and formed these bays. Every single one of them. That's how every single one of these Carolina bays is supposedly created. And then, this completely contradicts that. These chevrons completely contradict that you had steady winds over a long period of time creating the Carolina bays.
That's what I was going to say, because they're going the wrong way.
Yeah, completely the wrong way.
90 degrees to the direction that.
Right. Yeah, and that's actually a good point. I think that because all of these splash chevrons, and I'll show you a couple other examples here in a second, but they're all going from west to east. And I think, obviously, I think one of the reasons why that's happening is because of the direction of the secondary impactors. But also, I think that the initial impactor, the one that would have that would have gone into the Great Lakes area, I think that the blast of that coming into the atmosphere would have, just completely destroyed, and pushed everything in certain directions away from where that was happening. And so I think.
What direction is north in this picture? Is it north?
It's up. Okay. Yeah, it's up. Yeah. Yep. Not up, but top of the screen up. So anyways, but yeah, let me show you a couple other examples. I know that I normally listen to you guys, so I don't want to show too much pictures, but
no, it's fine. We'll
it'll
be video too, so it'll be in the YouTubes.
Yeah, the watcher just posted we have our Google Hangouts feed here where we can secretly chat behind your back. The watcher just showed us a picture of tsunami chevrons from Madagascar. And I mean, yeah, it looks very similar to what you were just showing.
Yeah.
Right. And the video that I put out on this, I really try to give as much education as possible when I do these videos. Most of my videos that were on this, there you go.
Now look, this is our super secret chat going way back.
That's right.
This is a lot of show chat.
That's show chat. Yeah. Yeah, that's classic Madagascar chevrons there.
Right. And the video I did on this, I use this as an example, and if you just kind of pan away from that and go to like Africa, and I think I even said in the video that I put out was, I didn't go out looking for it, but if you just go to the west, you'll find the same splash chevrons in Africa.
Yep. You can see them on the east coast of Australia or the west coast of Australia. Yeah.
Yep. So yeah, that's what they look like to me. Now, again, they can't be tsunami chevrons, because tsunamis come from the ocean, and we're not talking about the oceans here, but we are talking about bodies of water. So if there is a river there, and that's what we find.
Are there any that come from the oceans, though? Because surely these giant chunks of ice would have been splashing down in the ocean as well if they were hitting.
Yeah, but the ocean is to the east. So, and it would have been.
So you mean the waves would have kept going? Is that what you're saying? The waves would have kept going east?
Well, the ocean would have been a lot lower too. So we're talking about 100 miles of,
That's right. Okay.
Yeah. So we wouldn't find that, but definitely we have a lot of, a lot of bodies of water, a lot of rivers and things like that. Even though I think that a lot of the rivers that we see on the East Coast today formed after this event, and we could talk about that in a few minutes if you wanted to. But
yeah, they're new. I saw that in your videos. That was interesting.
Right. Let me go and do a screen share real quick. All right, can you see that?
Yep.
Okay, so this is another example. This is in, I think we're still in South Carolina. It might be in North Carolina. You can see here, I think that this was a pre-existing river. Again, you can see all the Carolina bays that have formed all over the place. And then I think that some of these chunks of ice landed into this pre-existing river and splashed it out here. You'll notice I have a couple push pins in these pictures that I'm showing. These are actually the site locations that I went to when I was on my White Pond trip, and I just filled up buckets of sand. Because my initial hypothesis was that we would find things like river stones, or we would find things like maybe some clamshells. But I'll talk about that here in just a minute, because we didn't actually find that, but we did find some really interesting things that we can still kind of use at some point. But anyways, it's the same thing. You can see here the splash chevron, and I wanted to collect this. Well, I kind of had to. This was I wasn't really trespassing, but I did invite myself to a spot right off the side of the road where I can collect some samples.
Did a little fence hopping, did you?
Yeah, no, I didn't have to hop any fences here. But if you watch a video of me actually collecting this, I'm definitely wearing what might be considered safety, reflective gear to make me at least look like I belong there.
Okay. That's side of the road camo.
Yeah. So anyways, I definitely, I got some samples here. And by the way, some people that are watching this might see this and and assume that we're looking at a pyramid here in South Carolina.
I was about to ask.
Yeah.
That very question.
Yeah, no, that's actually a dump. That's a landfill. And we find this actually a lot throughout the Southeast, where the highest locations are like the city dump or the county dump. But yeah, I was definitely, scraping some soil away from this dump's property.
Yeah, future archaeologists will say, yes, the people used to come here and venerate this place.
Yes, this is a tomb.
Yeah.
You're probably right.
People from all around came here to bring artifacts to sacrifice to the god something or other.
I didn't know they stack shit that high.
Yeah, we can. Anyways, so yeah, you could definitely see that same splash chevron. I'll show you one more, because I did 3 collection sites. Like I said, the push pin is actually where I collected some of the material. By the way, that's right next to a town called Manville. I just thought it was kind of an interesting name.
Manville.
Yeah, Manville. All right, and there's one more. Now, the last one I'm going to show you, this one is it's a really well-known area for Carolina Bays. It's been really well studied, and it's one of the reasons why I wanted to collect samples from here. This is right next to Big Bay. When you see it,
Oh yeah, look at that.
yeah, when you see it, this is actually, like I said, it's a really well-known Carolina Bay. There's been a lot of studies on Big Bay. And it's kind of one of I mentioned this in some of my videos. I really try not to cherry pick when it comes to, collection sites, when it comes to finding information about this kind of stuff. Unfortunately, a lot of times the scientific material that you come across it has at least become cherry picked because they keep going back to the same sites. And so there's a lot of information on Big Bay because they've done it's accessible, and they've done a lot of studies on this bay right here, Big Bay. But again, if you use the law of superposition, that would mean that this gigantic bay that formed right here would have happened before this sand got pushed into the bay itself. And again, it should have taken 100,000 years or something like that to do. This is a huge bay. It's really, really, really large. And then we have all of these, all of this sand that washed up into this area. And I think what we're seeing here is that this river was in this direction to the west, and just as things were coming down. I mean, for a bay to be this large, if it was actually created by ice, it would have been a huge chunk of ice.
Yeah.
Right. And so we're talking about an area, a zone where we had some really big chunks falling down, and you could see off to the left of the screen here. That's the current floodplain of the river that's there now. Mm-hmm. And it just pushed stuff all the way up. And I don't really have a good picture of it. There's actually a really good picture of another Carolina Bay that formed just north of where I have this screenshot. But anyways, this is where I got my 3rd sample site from, which is right in the middle of the image there. But yeah,
see the chevrons at the top of the picture there.
Definitely. And again, you can kind of see that there was stuff happening, like this chevron that splashed way up on the very top probably happened before all the stuff down in the bottom did, using the law of superposition. So it wasn't like it was all a uniform thing, like it all happened. Right. Well, let me rephrase that, because I do think it happened, right after one another. Like it was very, very quickly happening. But it wasn't like this was all formed by wind blowing over a long period of time. Otherwise, it would be more uniform in this area.
Right. And it looks like the bay
mm-hmm.
is cutting into some of it, and then some of it's coming into the bay. Like it was all sort of happening at the same time. Not the same time, but
right.
It's complex because like the top edge of the north edge of the bay there is cutting into what looks like the chevron features.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Come down farther south, it looks like the chevron features are rolling over the bay.
Right.
So that's really interesting.
Yeah. So again, the law of superposition is such a basic geologic idea. That's the foundation. And I just don't understand sometimes why there's so much trouble presenting this. So anyways, that was my third site. Now, like I said, what I was really hoping to find was clamshells and things like that would definitively say that this was pushed up from water, pre-existing rivers or flood or yeah. We didn't find that, but what we did find, and let's see. I'll show you this. This is now what, like I said, at each site I went to, I collected 2 5-gallon buckets of just sand. I just took a shovel. You could see the video. I documented everything, and I just filled up the bucket with sand, brought it back to my classroom where my students are. Which, by the way, if you guys don't know, I am an educator. I'm a teacher. That's what I do. And so anytime I get my kids to do some of my dirty work, I'm going to try to get them involved. But anyway, so it was just a really simple sediment slab. I brought these buckets back, and we just sifted sand. We used like a one, I think it was a 1 millimeter sift, size sift. And, all my kids had one, and we just sifted a bucket of sand and just to see what we can find, just to see if we can find anything, any kind of river stones or anything that was bigger than what we would expect to find. And that's, we did find some of that. We didn't find anything that would have sent up these huge red flags and, I would have gone to the presses with. But, we do have a couple centimeter sized stones and things that we found here and there that I can't see something like this being blown with everything else. And one of the things that all my students did mention was how dusty the sand was, and it was. And I took the sand directly out of the ground, and it was extremely, extremely. It wasn't quite as it wasn't as well sorted as you would expect to find from wind-blown sand over a long period of time. Yeah. Because the very fine sediments get blown farther, and the very coarse sediments are going to be closer to the source of where they just because they're heavier, right? Right. And so that's not what we found. We found like a lot of super, super, super fine sand, stuff that I could probably go back and sift out even farther, and try to find some of maybe even some proxies and things like that we do with Carolina Bays. I just don't even know where to start with it right now because right now I literally have like 6 5-gallon buckets of dirt or sand in my closet at the school. So, but it's there. If I need to go back to it, it's there. I just taken out these large chunks. And again, this is you can see this is a metric system, so that's 1 centimeter. That's 1.
And I'd say a couple of 5-gallon buckets is not enough to be for sure that you wouldn't find river shells. Yeah, right. Yeah, find a river shell in every shovelful of river sediment. So
right. And I had to be very selective too. I had to find places that were close to the road. I had to find places that were public, or at least close enough to being public, where I wouldn't get in trouble for trespassing or anything like that. Yeah. Anyways, this one right here is kind of I found this one in one of these sediments, and this is the only stone I found in that 5-gallon bucket, but it's a huge chunk of rock. Yep.
That's pretty big.
This did not get blown with all the other sediment and dust to that location. So now, could it have been brought there by another source? I really don't know, and that's why I think I told you earlier on email. It didn't really kind of develop as I was hoping it would, because I was really hoping to get that, nail in the coffin, here's a bunch of clamshells or something like that. And we didn't find that, so it kind of like stalled out, but it's still a very, the topic itself is still, in my mind, it's still very live. It's still, something I think is still extremely probable. So,
well, the other thing could be too, that let's say this was not a single event, right?
Right.
Like there's the idea that there was an impactor in Saginaw Bay or whatever. But if that wasn't the only one, mm-hmm. there were multiple ones in many different places in the world over a period of time, then there could have been new lakes and new amounts of water in places that hadn't been there very long enough for freshwater, life forms to.
Well, I think what I'm trying to say though is that like the Carolina Bays and these chevrons, splash chevrons, formed at the same time. Yeah. I find it very improbable that you would have conditions that would create perfect ellipses to begin with. I mean, we talked about that in the last time we met. I don't see that happening to create Carolina Bays. And then now you have this like almost 180 contradiction on how these parabolic dunes, because that's what they're called. They're called Parabolic Dunes. And I don't see that, it's just a complete contradiction. And I think that they happened at the same time. I think the same event created both of these things.
I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm
right.
saying that the event that created the Carolina Bays could very well have created the splash chevrons. My point is that the water that was there to provide the source for the splash chevron
I see, yeah.
newly deposited due to other impacts in other places that had happened weeks, months before that had changed the environment. You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
So you wouldn't find the shells because it wouldn't have been a long-lasting collection of water.
Yeah.
I don't know. Hopefully,
trying to help you out.
I know, I get it. So, anyways, I just think they're really, really kind of a neat, a neat add-on. Really, once you start digging into it, getting into the LiDAR and start looking, you just start finding all of these new pieces that kind of start adding to the whole story. And it really takes somebody to kind of step back, and not be so focused on, like with the guys at White Pond. These guys are extremely brilliant in what they're doing. Again, I had a whole new appreciation to the science of archaeology, but that's what they do. They're scraping pieces of sand out one at a time, and they're putting together whatever they can at that one spot. But when you step back and you really kind of look at the whole picture, it doesn't line up quite the same way. And so I think that's where I'm trying to go with it, really.
Yeah, I think you're doing good work, and I agree that those look like chevrons to me. They don't look like. I'm no expert, but
I think you're onto something.
I think you're onto something as well.
Well, I appreciate it.
Antonio Zamora are onto something with this.
Yeah. Yep. He's definitely, like I said, he's the guy who you guys should be talking to for real. He's definitely put this stuff together. I did term splash chevrons, and he's giving me credit for that, but he's the man. I mean, he's the guy who's doing this. He's been putting in the time and the effort. So,
we need to get him on the show for sure.
Yeah. Anyways, anything else about that? Like I said,
are you going to go back?
I've got all those buckets of sand in my closet. I don't know if I need to.
He's a dabbler. He's dabbled in the chevrons. Moving on.
No, but if the opportunity presents itself, like I said, I always try to maximize my time. Anyways, because I did go do that. The Carolina Bay dig with George. While I was there, I went and, dug through another Carolina Bay trying to find some neat stuff. And I found some neat stuff, and it was just, it's just awesome. I like getting out there and doing it. So,
I mean, looking at this picture you got up right here. I just want to walk. I want to walk it from the river, from that river.
Like I said, that's like 3 miles away. That's a lot of sand.
Yeah.
To be moved, even if it was blown, that's a lot of sand to be blown. And then why isn't it like right next to it?
Right.
Why don't you find the same ribbon of sand? There's a lot of questions that aren't really adding up, and I think we'll get there.
That's really cool. It's a great observation, though.
Yep.
All right.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you so much. Everybody check out Dabbler's Den on YouTube. Anything else? Where else can people find your work? YouTube's where I go. I do have Twitter, and I get on there quite regularly. Obviously, the Discord. Yeah.
The Snake Pit. You guys got to head up. If you haven't been into the Snake Pit, you got to go. I right now this whole shutdown of everything right now with the whole COVID deal. It's really kind of, I don't find myself in front of a computer as much anymore, which is kind of strange. I spend a lot of time in front of a computer, and I want to get away from it whenever, whenever I can. But right now, I have not had enough time to really sit down and put a lot of energy into this. So one way that I'm trying to get back into it, and just on Cosmographia, you guys were talking about the megafaunal extinction events and things like that. I want to start putting together some more videos highlighting some of the really unique megafauna that has went extinct during that Younger Dryas time frame.
Yeah.
But anywhere between 10 and 13,000 years, I'm highlighting those, and it's just amazing when you really stop and you really look at, the extinction level event that occurred in that brief amount of time. We had camels that lived here that are completely gone. I mean, there's not a single camel, and a camel is a very successful animal. They can live just about anywhere. Yeah. And I also didn't realize that camels actually originated in North America, and then they migrated from North America, to the Middle East and places like that. And so it's really kind of neat to go and look and say, that we had like 3 or 4 different types of llama species. We had the ones that we all grew up learning about, like the saber-tooth tiger and the mammoths and the mastodons and things like that. But there's a lot of really, really cool megafauna that a lot of people just don't talk about. And I kind of want to highlight those in a couple of future videos. So keep your eyes out for those.
All right. Awesome. Thanks, man. Thanks.
All right, guys.
Thanks,
Snakes.
See you in the pit.
Snakes.
All right, we'll see you. All right.
Yeah, that was a great segment.
Wait, did you get the obligatory snakes in there, or
No, I tried to throw a snake in there.
Okay.
Yeah.
He did it.
cool.
He got it in there.
I was paying.
I threw one on top of it.
Okay.
I didn't get all these questions.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Off Topic Brothers of the Serpent Podcast, episode 147. Taking a break from the Gods of Eden and getting a couple of friends into the show.
Just a little intermission.
Yeah, a little intermission. That's right. So we have one of our good friends and locals here on the Edwards Plateau, Brendan Lee, joining us for a segment or whatever else we might have on the show. And we're going to talk about what he does, which is nothing.
Let's first let everybody know that this is the Brendan who is the nothing guy.
That's right.
We've talked about in the past couple of episodes.
And he also sent us an email.
That's right.
Yeah, which I secretly started that fight behind Russ's back. But no, Brendan actually is part of a school. Would you call it a school?
Yeah, school or that's a good question.
Yeah.
It's like education or a way of considering things.
Yeah, it's also martial. It's martial arts and mind ontology. And I actually met him at a workshop at the dojo. We call it the dojo. That was called the Ontology. It was a week-long session of basically getting your mind blown. And then
we also had the one-day workshop with the
we did a one-day. You guys do all different types of workshops, and so it's a lot of very interesting stuff. And the martial I never got deep into, but you've been doing that for a long time. So why don't you tell our listeners like what it is you do, how you got into it, and all of that.
Yeah, sure. Basically, excuse me, sorry. What I do is there's like a whole body of work or study that we call it's called Chengshin. That's CHENGHSIN. And I've basically been working to rebrand it as like consciousness and skill worldwide. But basically what it is like a huge body of work. Most people get it confused with some kind of like Chinese name. They're like, oh my God, like what was that? What's that Chinese name? It's like, no, it's founded by an American man named Peter Ralston. And it's basically, there's basically like 2 main components. And the one huge component is the like skill domain where we work on martial arts or like martial skill. So it's like a huge study of the body and movement and what allows for power to occur and like what are the principles and dynamics that allow for effective interaction with bodies and martial arts, like AKA fighting. And then so that's like one domain. So Peter Ralston, he's the founder. The body aspect he calls the Art of Effortless Power. And
that's right.
Yeah, which is basically like people like say like the Art of Effortless Power, and people are like, well, what the fuck's that? Like, what does it look like? Hey, what is that? We don't know because nobody knows what it's called. But if you think like MMA, but super relaxed, and the focus is on being very relaxed, never fighting force against force, and being very fluid and skillful and very dynamic. So it looks like when people see it, they're like, oh, that looks kind of like dancing.
Yeah. It has some roots, or I shouldn't call them roots, but it's similar. It looks in some cases similar to some Tai Chi. Is that correct?
Yeah, Tai Chi, like you may see it if you're familiar with martial arts, you may see it and you'll see stuff like, oh, that looks like Tai Chi, or oh, that looks like Aikido, which is like a Japanese throwing art where they do a lot of beautiful throwing techniques and a lot of falling. You may also see hints of judo, which again is like a very big throwing technique, but we also do things like boxing, and we also do grappling, which is originally judo, but it's turned into Brazilian jiu-jitsu nowadays. So it's a very well-rounded art. We basically do striking, throwing, and grappling, which is like as far as I can tell, the three main domains in which people do martial arts, except the difference is we have a huge focus on using as little strength as possible, and also never blocking what your opponent is doing, but going with it and or yielding to it and or dodging. So that gives a totally different quality of motion. It's very mobile, and very focused on, like I said, the relaxed component.
Yeah. So when I was doing the ontology with you and
right,
Peter
which is the other
group.
domain of study. So there's like the martial, the body, and then we have this ontology, which may sound fancy, but simply means like the study of being. And as far as I can tell, is like in layman's terms, it's basically like questioning reality and being honest about it is what I personally would call that. You know, not to get it confused with like a fantasy or some sort of like spiritual fucking mumbo jumbo, but just like trying to look into things and then be like, what is this, or what is that, or what is skill, or what is, you know, what am I? What is existence itself? And really deeply questioning these things.
Yeah.
So anyway, sorry to cut you off.
No, that's cool. So one of the things that I guess stuck with me from that ontology, which was 13 years ago, probably.
Dude. Yeah.
One of the things that stuck with me was, you know, I'm listening to Peter. He's talking. He's this great fighter. You know, won the world champion, whatever, in China, martial arts back in the 70s.
He was the first, like the title, the traditional title is like he's the first non-Asian to win a full contact martial arts tournament I believe it was held in Taiwan, but China back in 1978. It was a full contact world tournament. And he was the first non-Asian to actually win that.
Right. So listening to this guy talk about perception, our experience and all this kind of stuff, I was gaining the idea from him that he used this when he was trying to make himself a better fighter, and he started working on things in his mind, and because he was unable to overcome certain things in his fighting skills, he started practicing on his mind, and ultimately got to a state to where he, from what I understood, he was describing, he was more like closer to the present and completely open to reality, what was actually happening, rather than letting his mind get in the way and using all this conceptualization that were actually not necessarily true things that he might be thinking. Like if someone's throwing a punch, he's like, oh my God, I'm about to get hit by this punch. And there's all this stuff going on in his mind.
Yeah.
He got rid of all that. And then that allowed him to perceive, I guess, faster, and so move with people that were attacking him in a fight scenario, and that helped him develop the style. Is that kind of?
Yeah. So sometimes, sometimes these things are a little bit challenging because of the amount of fantasy that seems to permeate the culture of what we're talking about. So the to the best of my knowledge, the reality of the situation is that Peter from a young age, like age 9, was very much into martial arts. I think he started doing judo when he was 9, didn't really know what it was, and then started to get into it more and more, moved to the Bay Area, San Francisco, and then he was into it he was in Berkeley, California back in the 70s, and there was a lot of stuff going on there, and he found a teacher named Wong Jackman back in the day. Well, he actually had several teachers, but in either case, it doesn't matter the amount of teachers he had. But he wanted to master fighting. And on his way for mastering fighting, he also discovered, back in those times and in that area, some people were doing things called enlightenment intensives, or like what we call contemplation intensives, but enlightenment intensives. And I'm sorry, excuse me. Peter was able to, he did some work in that area, the enlightenment area. Now, I don't mean enlightenment like the fucking, again, as I like to say, like the spiritual mamby-pamby bullshit mumbo jumbo shit that most people call enlightenment. It's all based on fantasy.
Hey, man.
No.
We're not going to be able to publish this on the radio because you keep dropping the F-bomb.
I've already dropped
Do you
some
need
bad.
less swearing?
I wasn't feeling as bad about what I did earlier.
Fewer F-bombs, but keep going.
Okay, I'll lower the F-bombs. Okay.
It's a family show.
Okay, got it. Family, yes, can do. F for family. None of the spiritual mamby-pamby crap that most people consider as like enlightenment, but the reality of the situation. He became conscious of, what he is. In the quote unquote absolute sense. And it's a bit of a challenge for me to share these things in the sense that I am almost certain that most of the people hearing, and this is not degrading the people who are listening to me, but it's just an observation on my part, meaning no disrespect to anybody, is they will likely misunderstand what I'm saying. And the reality of what I'm trying to say is, as far as I can tell, way better than the fantasy. And to add to what I'm trying to say, like I'm trying to tell a history about my teacher and mentor, Peter Ralston, is he became conscious of what he is, and he became conscious of aspects of quote unquote reality that allowed him, as far as I can tell, to make leaps and bounds in his learning in terms of physical martial skill that other people could not do because they are limited by the fact that they are and again, I'm using like metaphor here, so please don't read too much into this, but they're entrenched in the like domains of their own mind, whereas in enlightenment, it's as if freeing somebody from mind completely and even perception. So then, like you were saying, Kyle, it allowed him the ability to perceive what is really going on, whereas many other people are still stuck in certain ways of thinking and perceiving the world that they think are like what's real, and he can as if operate outside of that.
Yeah,
and so
it gives it a look when you watch him fight, as though he's like reading their minds, basically.
Yeah, he's incredibly skillful. I mean, there is no doubt in my mind. I mean, he is like, I think he's like in his 70s now. He still works with me. Like, I have been training with him personally, and it's an honor for me because he's so good at what he does. He's so aware with his body, even at his age. It's just mind blowing. And so what I'm trying to say here is that even though there are many people out there, and I'm sure perhaps even some of the people listening, like when I say this, you're going to go, oh yeah. There's many people that have this, like the martial arts, the enlightened martial arts master fantasy, where it's like, oh my God, he's a martial arts master. He's on the hill and he's enlightened and blah, blah, blah. So then that fantasy, that's what I call the mamby-pamby crap. But the reality of it is he has had enlightenment experiences, and it has contributed a great deal to his ability to learn and create skill in these other domains. Now, I'm not saying they go together, although many people will want to squash those together. They don't need to go together. But the fascinating part for me is like for example, he created a principle he called sprouting, which is basically sensing / perceiving the other's intent to do something. And as soon as they intend to hit you, you destroy them. So you're feeding off of their intent. This is before they even take action. You are handling what they do before they even act. And if you consider that, it's obvious that you would totally dominate anybody.
Yeah, if you could
in
master
that realm,
Yeah.
if you could do that.
Right, because it's to them it would seem like you're reading their mind, right?
Yeah.
Because they haven't even taken action yet, and you're already acting on what they're going
Exactly.
to do.
Yeah.
You're wiping them out when they even have the thought to do something.
Right.
And you're responding appropriately. And to that, like for people, that probably seems a lot like magic.
Yeah.
Whereas the reality of it is, and again, this is my perspective and my consideration based on my own personal experience, is he's so as if what I personally think. So again, this may or may not be true. You would have to discover this for yourself. My perspective is that the enlightenment has allowed him to, as if it's like setting the bar to 0. And then anything that arises after 0 is much more easily seen if you have and this is a terrible metaphor, as if cleared everything out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I get it. Yeah.
That's kind of the way I like. If I break it down with my sort of scriptard, physicist kind of thing, and I looked at it like that. Like you take away. He did this. He gave this example. This is the other one of the main things that stuck with me as well. One of the other ones from the ontology. He busts out this gun. In front of everybody, he just whips out this pistol.
Yes.
And everybody's like,
we
"Oh."
still do the pistol.
Yeah. And he's like, okay, so he's teaching this concept of he calls completing.
Right.
And so the idea to complete something is to take away. You want to add everything. When you normally think of completing something, you want to add everything that belongs to it, right? But there's also the other aspect of taking away the things that don't belong to it.
Yeah.
So he asked the class, so what first comes to your mind when you see this? And people say gun, and then he's like, more, give me more. Black, metal, kills people, all of this stuff.
Yeah.
And then he points out that actually none of that is this, right?
Yes.
None of that stuff that you said is this thing. And then he goes in to describe how, you can use physics to do this. The blackness is actually a reflection of the light and everything, but that doesn't actually tell you. And then when we say metal, it's made of metal. That isn't, what is metal? And then it goes into all this stuff. And so we have all these concepts built up. We could dig into this one subject for hours in this class of going into every different element that was used to describe the thing that he was holding in his hand.
Yeah.
Including size and weight and just everything.
Yeah.
And it turns out that actually none of that is really what that thing is. We actually don't know what that thing is. We've added all these concepts to it. We can talk about the things that it can do, or that it was made by people and all that kind of stuff, but it doesn't really actually describe the thing. So that was one of the exercises that really stuck with me. It's like, once you remove all of that stuff, then it's like, I have no idea what that is.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. I don't know. So the idea was that if you're doing that in a martial sense, you're removing all of these concepts away from, it's almost like your consciousness is closer to reality than anybody else's consciousness if they're behind all of these conceptualizations.
Yeah, it's kind of like that. It's like as if their image is clouded, or their vision is dominated by conceptualization, and then even worse, they don't, for the most part, people do not realize how much conceptualization they actually are doing. And I mean, constantly. For example, I know you guys are in the tangent cube over there. You couldn't get out the door without concept.
Right.
You couldn't understand what I'm saying without concept. It's like it dominates your perceptive experience. And in terms of fighting, you do not want anything in the way of
Kicking
what's
ass.
going on.
Brendan,
Yo.
so you want to know how I try to describe you to, like, I don't know, let's say like one of my best girlfriends or like my mom?
Sure. I love hearing about myself, so go ahead.
Well, I just, I don't
No, I
use
don't know
anywhere
how you do it,
near
but-
these many words at all. I just say, he's kind of like, or he studies under this guy who basically it's like you kind of got like Jedi mixed with ninja.
Yeah. There you go.
There you go.
Jedi ninjas.
Jedi
Yeah.
The
Ninja.
Jedi ninjas, yeah. But then, and I would add to help balance a little bit. There's the fantasy of the Jedi and the fantasy of the ninja, and it's more the reality, which is like it's boring and there's shitloads of hard work and it's uncomfortable and just many thousands of hours of training the same thing, beating my head against the wall, trying to figure something out that my mind can't figure out. And there's also that.
But I'm not going to add that many words in. I just am like, hey, Brendan's swinging by. It's the guy that's kind of like the Jedi ninja. Oh, yeah, him. Okay.
But I just want to point out, Brendan, that you're right, that there's thousands and thousands of hours of work of
Yes.
both mind and body. But in the end, it looks like you're reading people's minds and kicking their ass.
yeah.
Yeah. And that's like an awareness thing because
I know, but what I'm trying to point out is, like you said earlier, it looks like magic, and why couldn't it be magic?
I have nothing against magic.
No, I'm not talking about magic as in terms of like there's something wrong with magic. What I mean is like that is what anybody would describe as magic. This person is actually living. It looks, or another way you'd say it, with using Kyle's, beloved reductionist physicist guy, is he's living in the future compared to everyone else because he's got rid of all this stuff in his mind. Right.
And or he's making distinctions that other people are not making. So whereas like most people, the way that they perceive and are aware of reality tends to be a bit after the fact. And I'm like putting this very, very loose right now. I'm imagining that he can as if see, say it's like steps 1 through 10. And then so say step 0 is we get to the grocery store. Step 10 is I grab the can of beans. At step 6, and I'm sorry if this metaphor is falling apart. At step 6, the person is reaching for the beans and taking them off the shelf at HEB or whatever your local grocery store is. Just fill in the blank. Peter sees steps 1 through 5, which is the thought about, hey, maybe I want some beans. The intent to grab some beans, the sending the signal to the nervous system, move the hand to reach the beans, and like all those steps prior, let's just say, just for fun, and I'm not saying this is true at all, but all those steps prior, imagine if somebody was actually aware of that. Yeah. And then it would appear, like you're saying, Russ, as if magic, because then you see somebody who is doing these things that don't make any sense, and yet somehow it works out.
Right.
And relating to things, like that.
Yeah, I like the idea of he's zeroing out time. Like he's living closer to the actual moment of the present.
Yes.
Than anyone
like that,
else.
And or can be aware of such things because of this quote unquote zeroing out, or like, what you guys say jokingly toward me is like the nothing thing or the nothing deal.
Yeah.
Which again, no hard feelings. I fucking love you guys. Oh, excuse me, I love you guys. Anyways.
Okay, so let's switch gears then to your own experience in all of this. I mean, that's Peter's background and the body of his work. But so you became a part of it, and I said I think I went to that thing 13 years ago or so.
Yeah.
And met you there, and that was a 1-week workshop that I went to, which actually was a month long. It was a portion of a month long, and then you do a 7-month long, and you do. So how has this affected you, and what have you Just talk about your own experience in it, I guess.
Yeah,
Your
sure.
path.
My what? Sorry.
Your path, you know?
Yeah, sure. I guess I can give like a fairly quick summary of some of the highlights, I suppose. But basically, my story is, and this is the story I tell people, is like when I was younger, I was in high school. I was 17. I was very happy, although I don't really care that much that I wasn't happy. In case you're creating a lot of meaning about that, I was basically like, I need a teacher. Is the story, right? And as if the world or the universe, I put it out there. I'm like, man, it's like, that's it. I'm tired of this crap. This is terrible. I need something. And I was studying like Qigong and Tai Chi at the time. And I met this guy, you know, this teacher. And he's like, hey, do you want to come do this workshop with this guy, Peter Ralston? I'm like, sure. And so at age 17, I went to my first workshop and I saw who is my now teacher, Peter Ralston. He's my mentor. We carry on several different types of relationships, but he's my master, so to speak, or my teacher, my mentor, you know, sometimes my friend, whom I love very much. And I saw him, and what he was teaching completely blew my mind. I'm like, holy crap, that's amazing. I don't know where you are, what you're doing, but I want to go do that in essence. And it turned out he was in Texas, down here in the hill country northwest of San Antonio. I moved down here and I started studying with him and, you know, did, like you were saying, Kyle, there's apprenticeship programs that were like 7.5 months. And I've been doing those programs since 2004. And I think I've done like 7 apprenticeships with Peter. And these are 7.5 month programs, 6 days a week, 8 to 10 hours a day training. And it just doesn't stop. It just keeps going. And so I've done that basically throughout my 20s. You know, I'm 36 now. And so through that time, you know, I started in like the martial arts world, learning what's called Cheng Shin Tui Shou, or the Art of Effortless Power. And then I also got into what we call the consciousness work, or Cheng Shin consciousness work. And I basically spent my 20s living in a dojo in Texas, training with this guy. And
occasionally coming to hang out with the Snake Bros.
Correct.
That's just crazy, man.
And you came to our wedding.
I came,
and you brought some of your buddies from the dojo.
We had a guy out here for a 3-month program named Tom, and Tom ended up at, I guess, meeting you, Kyle, and then Kyle, you invited Tom to your wedding, and then I came out there.
Wedding crasher.
That's right, and we all ended up hanging out in your place there, and I remember it's like you, and I don't know if Russ was there, but Amanda and Stacy and like all these people who I met through that and just stayed in touch with over the years.
Yeah.
Yep.
I was there, bro. What's the deal?
Russ was
you
the
were
best
there?
man.
I couldn't remember.
I was the best man. Gave the best man speech.
Which was a phenomenal
I couldn't
speech.
remember if you were in the house partying after or not. I imagine so.
Yeah, I was. I gave the best man speech, and then I had to take them to the beginning of their honeymoon. So I left right after that. But yeah,
okay, got you. And then obviously, like we have had interactions throughout the years. Like
yeah, you were my roommate for a while. You came and lived with me, and this is when we started the nothingness arguments.
Freaking nihilist.
This is when I first called him
nihilist, bro.
Hey, you're applying so much meaning to that word nihilist, bro. You just need to accept it. It means nothing. Okay. One other thing. I know I'm jumping around, but it just
it's all good.
I just remembered, like, there's in the many years we've known each other, there have been key moments when we would definitely try to hang out, and it was usually after one of the very long workshops that you guys would do, the consciousness workshops, and you would often bring, you know, a group of the guys or girls or whatever who had come there, and a lot of times they're from all over the world, coming to this thing. And the reason you would call me and we would end up like throwing a party is to blow everybody's mind, because it literally, like, just like that 1 week ontology, that I went to, with the isolation that's involved in just that 1 week. And while you're sitting in there and you're listening to Peter go through his all of these topics and stripping away all of your notions of understanding, basically. And you don't realize it while you're in there. You're just like, oh my God, this is really hard. I've been sitting on this hard cushion for 8 hours and 10 hours and getting my mind blown. And then you have to be silent and all this kind of stuff. And then the feeling that happens when you go back into the world, re-enter the world, so to speak, is just, it's nearly indescribable to me. And of course, it's been a long time for me, but I experienced it that one time. We all went out together after that.
Yeah.
And we were in a bar, and like the group of us were all looking at each other as we're observing how everything's happening in this bar. And we're just like looking at each other like, oh my God, this is insane. What is happening right now? Yeah. So over the years, when you guys would end a workshop, Brendan would call me and be like, hey buddy, we just got out of a 3-month long or a 7-month long or something. And it was like, all right, bro, let's throw a party. And
we call up all the people.
Yeah,
we call up everybody and set up all the freaking flashing lights and everything.
And Brendan brings like 4 or 5 people, and they just it's just funny to watch everybody's mind be blown.
Like looking around like, holy shit. And I'm like, I know, right? It's insane.
So why does that happen?
What I think, and the reason I think that happens is because, from my own experience, what I've
Which
noticed
is all you've
that,
got.
Right, this is true.
Cut the what are they called?
What?
I'm just thinking. You keep giving the
disclaimers.
Disclaimers, yeah.
Oh,
We know it's from your own experience, bro.
Okay, cool. For some reason, I feel it's necessary. I'll practice not doing that.
We're just giving you shit.
Yeah.
Oh,
You're doing fine. You're doing fine.
Yeah,
I
it's
love
great.
you too. When I would get done with the workshop, what I suspect is going on is I've noticed that when I do a workshop, I get really, really sensitive to pretty much everything. And I've literally, so putting this in the context of doing consciousness workshops, I am sitting there, and as far as I can tell, basically it's like I am trying to become aware of what is. Yeah. And if I spend an entire week, and we intentionally do this for the purpose of empowering the workshop, is we strip away as many distractions as possible. Like, people do not get on their phones. They don't read. I will, like, nowadays I run the workshops for the most part. Like, I'm actually facilitating now, but I'm talking about back in the day when I wasn't. But nowadays, like, all text, you don't see text. We cover like the main mirrors in the room. So
no
it's
symbols.
Very much, no symbols. And then in more intense workshops, people aren't talking to each other. They aren't reading, they're writing, they're not looking at phones, any electronics, computers, whatever, music, nothing. And so they're just there with themselves.
In their minds.
Totally.
Yeah.
And that has a certain effect.
And they're being directed, right? Like during the day, you're giving them sort of mental tasks and stuff that they can work on in their quiet time and all this kind of stuff in their mind.
Absolutely, like tasks, exercises, and it's very structured, and it's structured on purpose. And people are working hard. And as I joke now, I'm like, hey, it's called a workshop, because we do a lot of hours of work.
Yes.
It's a workshop. And by the end of that, they don't know it because they've been sitting in it, kind of like, one of the metaphors we use here is like
the frog in the boiling water almost.
Yes, that's the one. That's exactly the one, dude. Is there's a frog in the boiling water. If you throw them in boiling water, or her, whatever, right away, they'll jump out. But if you put the frog in the water and then just turn up the heat, it will stay in the water and eventually perish because they don't realize that they're in the boiling water.
Right. That's slow change. You don't realize it.
Yeah, exactly. People don't realize it. And I give this disclaimer at the end of the workshops, like, hey, you've been in basically a pressure cooker for a week, and it's a very abnormal pressure cooker.
You know why that is? Because their minds are snakes. Sorry. Anyway,
That's
continue.
right. They've been snake. That's a good plug. It's good to keep that going. When I hear you guys responding to emails, it cracks me up because there's so many people that are so. They're like, they send this thing. It's profound. They're like, I love your work and snakes. And then
That's right. Got to keep it going.
they keep it going. It's really smart.
I want to say
People
something.
realize they're
I see we're
super
out of time, but I
sensitive,
wanna say-
and then so when they leave.
And what I want to say,
that-
what you mean by, you said earlier that you become sensitive to everything, and you're saying that other people are too. What you mean by that is sensitive to all this input.
All the stuff that's already going on.
Right, input from reality, not like sensitive like most people mean, like, oh my God, you said a bad word or something. Like, not that kind of
Right.
No, those
Correct,
things are
correct.
almost, those things don't have hardly any bearing.
Right.
Right?
Yeah,
You're just like, wow.
It's almost like the reverse. Like,
Yes.
I was remembering, actually, just recently has happened. You know, Peter came down, and you know, I take certain things here on the ranch very seriously, and there was like a broken water line where there's watering the trees, and I was, you know, to shut up. I was like balls deep in a workshop, and I looked out and I see this thing that's broken. And normally I'd be a little bit freaked out, like, hey, can I help you fix that? And I looked at this thing that's broken. I'm like, Peter, the water's broken. He's like, yeah. I'm like, I'm just going through the meaning I should have about that. None of it stuck, and I didn't care. I'm like, do you need me to do anything about that? He's like, he looks at it, and he usually takes these things very seriously too. He's like, no. I was like, all right.
That's
and I
great.
just left it. So yeah, it's and as weird as that sounds, it's like the meaning. It's like I can recognize meaning for what it is.
Yeah.
And meaning is simply an activity of mind. It's like something I create. If something means something, it means something to me.
Yeah.
And then I can see the activity say, and then this I'm trying to loop this back to what you were saying, Kyle, is like I see it for what it is. Oh, I'm creating that. Does it matter that I'm creating meaning? No. Here's the meaning I would give it. Is that cool? Yeah. Okay. Don't care.
Right.
And in addition, like when we would go out, like trying to loop it again, way back to the beginning here, when I would go out to bars after these workshops, I could see these social manipulations that everybody
Yes.
is
Yeah.
engaged in, and
It's
it is
crazy.
overwhelming.
It is overwhelming.
It is insane.
It really is.
But I mean, look,
insane.
it's beyond that because it's not just people. I remember driving out of there for the first time and I saw the stoplight and I was just like,
Dude.
oh my God, it just blew my mind. It literally blew my mind because I was just like, the stoplight.
Red means stop.
Well, yeah, it was
green
it was
means
the
go.
symbol, but it was also the structure and the entire everything that we have built and the entire society, like the whole idea of all of this stuff and these rules and all the meaning of everything that we've created, quote unquote, as you say, was like flooded back to me as a whole.
And
Like
it's
I
like,
saw it,
holy
and I was just like,
smokes,
wow.
I can now see. It's
I'm driving in this vehicle, and there's a stoplight, and I know what to do.
Yeah.
It's just
and it's mind blowing the amount of stuff your brain needs to do to figure out that red and that shape. Plus, you're driving your car, so every millimeter you're moving, perception is changing, and your mind is able to map all that out.
Yeah, and it makes you very sensitive to all of those things going on in your brain, which is why I think it's so mind blowing. So
Absolutely, it seems to me very much like that.
What do you want to say, Laura?
I got to go to the one-day workshop, and I don't remember what it was
Communication
called.
workshop.
Okay.
Yes. Awesome.
Oh, nice. Right. Got it.
And we had a bunch of our friend group there. And we all basically took turns kind of trying to slowly punch each other and then kind of come with that.
Like doing the yielding stuff. There was a little martial in there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to say the one thing that I took away from that's always stuck with me is moving from your core. Instead of leaning over to grab something with only your arm, you actually are moving from your core. So I drive my car a little differently ever since this workshop because I think you actually went over this example when we were in there. You got your arms up on your steering wheel and you're your core is, if you really just focus on your core and think that that's where everything's stemming from, then you don't actually turn the steering wheel with your arms, really. I mean, you kind of do, but it's kind of like from my core, I'm kind of turning my whole body to bring my arms over, but I'm not isolating just my arms and like,
Yes.
okay, now I need to turn this wheel left. I'm kind of like in my car, like kind of lean, or I don't know how to describe it, but that's always stuck with me from that workshop. So I just wanted you to know that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
even a 1-day workshop changes people.
Yeah.
I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Brendan, what do you? I know you have you do a lot of stuff for Peter online, right? Do you have places people can check this out if they're interested? Where can they go?
Yeah, absolutely. If you are interested in this type of stuff and it is a huge body of work, they can go to peterralston.com. So that's Peter Ralston, RALSTON.com. And or I have a website, thebrendanlee.com. So that's BRENDANLEA.com. So thebrendanlee.com.
And weren't you doing a podcast for a little while? You still?
A video cast or something.
No, I do have an active YouTube channel. That's what I'm currently working on. And I do have some fantasies about starting a podcast.
You got to get rid of those fantasies, bro.
Yeah.
Make it a reality. Come on.
It's
Don't give us that
action, man.
fantasy horse crappy.
That's right. No, I'm 100% with you guys. That's why I call those fantasies. Right now, no intent to act on that. However, I may.
Yeah.
With no promises. At
And
this
also,
point.
Peter Ralston has quite a few books published. And before I ever met him, I read Zen Body Being, which
Correct.
was a great.
That's his like basics for people if you want to do like body stuff.
It was a great introduction to his work.
I read Art of Effortless Power. It was good too.
Okay.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Because the first time we met Peter, he was like, read my book. And I was like,
Yeah.
fine. Bam. 4 hours. I'm done. What next?
That's right. That's hilarious.
Also, we got one more question here. This one came from the Watcher. He said, would you say that the enlightenment experiences of a true master show a sort of universal truth that permeates other disciplines, which is why the masters of all martial arts are historically described as possessing deep wisdom and incredibly insightful philosophy? They are accomplished artists and poets and skilled in so many other disciplines at near a master level.
Yeah. Because I'm seeing this text. Ooh.
Brendan's a student, Watcher.
Now listen, bro, don't start talking crap about Bruce Lee.
Oh, you can.
Don't even bring it up.
Some stories about Bruce Lee. Actually, maybe another time we can get. We can drink some out. We can imbibe libations and talk in slurred speech about Bruce Lee. I'm just trying to process the question here. So let's see. We see an enlightenment experience of true master.
Yeah, basically,
So-
do you think that enlightenment experiences of a true master of martial arts, does this permeate other disciplines? Right? He's basically asking
Yes.
a lot of the true masters of martial arts historically are described as possessing of deep wisdom.
Yeah. So let's see. Ooh, that's awesome. Awesome question. Now, all right, here we go.
You can say you don't know.
Yeah, no. I've got some stuff, but it may take some a little bit of back and forth, and I'll try to keep it as what do you call that? Concise as possible.
Yeah.
Enlightenment. I have had an enlightenment experience, me personally. What the Zen people might call a Kensho. But I have become conscious of something absolute, which they call an enlightenment experience. Peter has had many of these. Now, enlightenment experiences have nothing to do with, and the enlightenment experiences, here we go. Enlightenment experiences have nothing to do with the relative world. And yet, it does seem to me that having this, what I'm going to call consciousness, and then what we jokingly go to back and forth about is like the nothing realization or whatever. seem to allow me an ability to understand reality in a way that allows me more facility with that reality. Okay.
That's really cool.
So now if, now when the Watcher says a true master, first of all, I would say there's nothing true about a master. A master is simply somebody who has mastered something relative, which is not quote unquote true, but that's another story, and we can argue about that later.
All right.
Semantics. Come on, guy.
But this is a human being who is just like you and I, that has likely spent thousands upon thousands of hours and applied themselves with massive intelligence and intent, so that in their personal domain, they are what you and I call a master. Now, what I suspect is the case for masters is if a human being spends enough time to work something out to such a degree that we would call that mastery, they understand the process of being able to master something, and it does teach them things about themselves. It teaches them things about the craft that they are engaging within. It teaches them things about reality, because without these quote unquote realizations, the human being that is working in this domain will not be able to master their craft. They must realize certain things about themselves and reality and what they're doing that you and I call, wisdom. And then, so it does not seem to.
So it's not like one stems from the other exactly. It's sort of like they work together.
In a certain sense.
That's cool.
Now, it does seem to be that there are a lot of, again, fantasies about, like, the enlightened martial arts master. Yet we should acknowledge that there are other domains that enlightenment, what I'm calling enlightenment, and it would behoove whomever is listening to be very careful about what they think is really the case when I say that there is enlightenment, say, like, we could consider that Kant was enlightened, or we could consider that, well, obviously we consider Buddha was enlightened, or we could consider that, maybe Einstein even had some enlightenment experiences or what we call consciousness on certain matters that allowed them to view what you and I call reality in a way that is very unique and very powerful. And maybe bringing the conversation way back to the beginning, allowing, like when Peter, he's able to see what people are doing. Why? Because he has as if cleared his mind or had a quote unquote enlightenment experience, become conscious of the absolute nature of something, so that then he can see, so that then he can investigate to a level and degree that most people call, like wow, or abnormal, or
magic.
Magic, or something.
And I would also point out that Peter has never claimed to be a master.
Right. That's true.
And am I still correct about that?
No, he, yes and no. He said, he says he's a master, but then one of the things he says that cracks me up, he's like, it's not that I'm so good, it's just that everybody else is so bad.
Well, I guess the last point, we're getting up on time here, but
please.
One of the other things that I found interesting and profound about his the way he set up his fighting style was all these principles that he laid out, right? The principles, each one you can practice individually. And it was a cool idea, because if you became a master, quote unquote, of any one of those principles, you couldn't be beaten in a fight.
Yeah, they're very powerful. And I do suspect
which is just like, that
the ability to investigate such things, and as much as we do not connect enlightenment with skill, but the ability to investigate those things in the first place is massively aided by enlightenment experiences.
The enlightening experience, yeah.
Like being able to look into things, being able to discover new things that other people can't see as far as I can tell, because they're so wrapped up in their own mind and perception and awareness and what they think is really real. And when you start to break that up, it allows a space and an openness that is very rare.
Or they have other priorities, you know?
Absolutely. And those will absolutely, as if cover the, distort the image or cover the painting or, get in the way.
All right.
Thank you so much,
fantastic.
Brendan. That was great.
Heck yeah, man.
Yeah.
All right, people, check them out, peterrowson.com.
Changshin.com.
Because no one can spell changshin.com.
That's right. Yeah.
And what was it? Brendan, the Brendan Lee.
The Brendan Lee, because there's a photographer in
It's
England
not a real
who's my
website.
domain name.
Yeah. There's nothing on that website.
There's nothing on that website.
Check it out.
That's right. But that's right. There's nothing here and none of it matters.
Thanks, Brendan. Appreciate it,
Yeah,
man.
it's my pleasure. It's nice to talk with you guys as always.
Snakes! Taking the job of the master. Shut up over there, Rona. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's it for today. That was a great interview with Brendan
That was a pleasant intermission.
And Chris.
and Chris. That's right.
Better
So
for you, Grandma.
wait until next show to start your workout. So yeah, we're at the end of the show here. We love all you guys. Send us an email. Send Russ an email, who might read it on the show if he gets a chance. brothersoftheserpent@gmail.com. Go to the website, brothersoftheserpent.com. Check out the encyclopedia, the glossary of terms there, so you can understand our lingo. And of course, check out the snake skins. Get yourself a t-shirt. We will be getting some more graphics up on that pretty soon.
Yeah.
Snake Force.
Yeah,
Sure.
Snake Force.
We got one. Donate to our pyramid scheme. You can do a one-time donation on PayPal. Also, you can do recurring donations on PayPal. Russ never mentions that, but many people do it. You can also donate to our Patreon. And we appreciate everyone who has. Thank you so very much.
Yes.
Sending out straight to pyramids. So we appreciate it. Give us reviews, share the shows, check us out on Twitter @SnakeBros with no vowels, SNKBRS. Russ is very active on Twitter. I am on $50 Dynasty.
That's right.
That's right. And I'm not very active there, but sometimes. And join the Facebook group run by Jordan.
Actually, so Brandon, I should say this, Brandon told me that Jordan has turned over running that to History Shift.
Oh, wow.
Because
Also run by
Jordan
History
has a big family, and he's like, dude, I don't have time anymore. So Jordan started it, but now it's run by
All right. Well, thank you so much, Jordan, for your time and
Yeah,
starting
thank
that
you.
and getting it going. We very much appreciate it. And take care of your family, buddy.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. And thank you to History Shift.
Brandon also has a family, but he doesn't care as much.
That's right. Check out History Shift @History Shift. And he also has a YouTube channel. You can check that out. Also, check out the Library of the Serpent, run by Jeff, and the Discord, which is also run with an iron fist by Jeff.
That's right.
And we've got many admins in there. Thank you all for your work on that. And the Discord's a great place to come and have snake talks.
That's right. Snake Wife just joined.
That's
Laura's
right.
in there.
Yes, and I'd like to give a special shout out to, I hope I'm saying this right, is it Lolly?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Another new member.
What's up?
Hey, girl. I like our chats.
Yeah, good chats. And check out the podcast we do with Randall Carlson, Cosmographia, and at Poddoodles. I'm reading this list all back. See, I'm just like going up and down the list. I don't do it as good as Russ.
Doing fine.
He does doodles of our podcasts and many other podcasts, and it's really entertaining. Check it out. Check us out on Reddit. Give us updates. What's the Reddit deal?
It's r/Brothers of the Serpent.
Yeah. Yep, and thanks so much to Where Did the Road Go, Uncharted X, Mike and Maurice,
Mike and Maurice.
Mindscape. That's right. The C Word Podcast, Crimerica, Conspiranormal, and Dabbler's Den.
And the
Not a
Cosmic.
Podcast, and the Cosmic Tusk.
That's right.
Yeah, check out Dabbler's Den on YouTube. And
Hope you guys enjoyed those interviews.
Chang Chin,
And Feng Shin, yeah.
Yeah.
PeterRalston.com, folks.
Yep.
Learn nothing.
Gods of Eden back next week
That's right.
when my throat is less swollen and sore. So,
And I'll have questions and comments, or I'll just have some things to say, and
Yeah.
we'll get right back in it. And I'm closer to my mic. Sorry
Sounded good.
about
Sounded
the
good over
last
there.
time. I sounded like I was way back.
Working on the mic etiquette.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Working on the mic.
Yep.
All right, so we thank all of you so much for listening, and we will see you next week.
we love you.
Always have.
I love you the most.
Good night, Adamu.
Get back to work.
Snakes!